Okay, so in this video, I want to show you how some of the techniques and different methods for resisting and applying paint we could use in an actual piece of art. So before I turned on the video camera, I drew this little tree on my paper. It's one of the little papers you've been using. So at the end of the video, you should get yourself a little paper and try to do some kind of little realistic scene. So now I drew in my tree and I drew in kind of the horizon line where the sky meets the earth. And then my plan is I want to paint a sky, but if I was going to paint the sky and leave the tree like this, I would have to go all around the branches, and I actually want some leaves. So I'm going to use the resisting technique to cover my tree. I'm using the blue tape. And then I'm going to cover a bigger portion at the top because, let me finish covering the bottom of the tree. I want to eventually paint green, and I was thinking I would use some stippling after I paint the initial green to put in the texture of the leaves. So I'm going to mask off a larger area than I even have drawn for my tree so that I'll have space for my leaves. And that way I can put the sky in without worrying about having to paint between the branches and leave space for the green, and it'll give me a better sky because it'll be one flowing continuous space of color. I actually want some clouds in my sky, so I'm going to also use the crayon resist. I'm going to use white. I'm going to press really hard so I get into all the little spaces, which in the last video I told you is called the tooth of the paper. And I'm actually going to add some blue into light blue to give the cloud a little more depth. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick up some blue color and I'm gonna paint the sky. Whenever you see a sky, if you look carefully, it's always darkest at the top, and at the horizon, which is again the line where the earth meets the sky, that's where it's the lightest. And that's the case in any sky. As long as you can see the entire sky, it's not cloudy or foggy because of weather. So now I'm gonna go in with a darker color at the top, and I'm going to paint it down almost like the wash technique we did in the video. And also remember that if we use more than one color in any area, it's going to look more realistic and it's going to look more interesting, which is something we always want. I'm going to add a little more blue at the top and pull it down. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush. And usually we would wait for this to dry, but in the interest of the video, I'm actually going to use a tissue to kind of blot the extra color. And then I'm going to remove the tape. And notice it did a really great job of resisting the paint, which is what it's supposed to do. So now I'm going to go in, and again, usually you would kind of wait for this. I'm going to go in with a light green and just paint my tree. My tree I originally drew with Sharpie and a Crayola marker. The Crayola marker, because it's a water-based marker, it will bleed. That's the darker brown. Whereas the Sharpie, because it's a permanent marker, it won't bleed. So I'm trying to be really careful. Alright, so I have my base color for my tree, for the leaves. And now I want to go in with a darker green, and I'm going to do the stippling technique to add texture. Now because it's wet, it's going to have a different texture than if I waited for it to dry. So I just want to kind of add some leaves. I'm going to even pick up a different shade of green and put that in too. Okay, so notice how there is a white space here. I didn't go very carefully with the blue tape because I was trying to go fast for the video. But notice that it's a nice continuous sky, whereas if I didn't do the resist of the tape, so I could paint right over the tree, it would have kind of gone right up to the edge of the tree, and then I would have had to start over, and you'd be able to see that. I can go in with a wet brush and kind of pull the blue over a little more. add a little bit of paint, and then you don't see that big white space. So obviously, and then in the bottom I can go in, I can do any kind of technique I've already done. I'm gonna do wet on wet. You notice the Crayola marker just kind of smudged because I hit it with a wet water. But I could just put like a light shade of green in. And then to make it a little more interesting, I could add some more green in places. Okay, so that would be a practical application of using resist to do an actual little piece of art. So I want you to try to do a realistic scene. You could do a tree with clouds like I did, or you could do something similar. But you want to use the resisting techniques and any other techniques that might help to add realism to your work of art.